All right. Well, hello, everyone. We've got a small group to start so far as we kind of kick off this NHL Draft lottery stream. We'll have many more joining us, I'm sure. Yeah, thanks for spending the evening with us. It's been a while since we hung out. It's been what, Ian, like almost 12 months since our last thing, the actual draft itself. It's been a minute.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
I remember having a great time with a few, I think, low thousands people until we got shut down for copyright violations partway through
Yeah.
the stream. But it was great while it lasted. Um, so it's good to be back.
We disrespected IT law and they got us.
Yeah, it's a good thing neither of us have legal educations. We can
Mhm.
plead ignorance
Yes.
on that one. Um, but yeah, how you doing? Are you excited for the lottery?
It's one of those like I don't want to be excited for it.
Yeah,
It's another year and it's kind of frustrating that the team's in this spot, but hey, like we've said before, the draft kind of represents infinite optimism. Jeez.
yeah, and I guess the fan base could probably use a bit of that these days. Um, I've never. It's weird because like as the team gets better, the expectations grow, and in a weird way, like the results this year in terms of like actual points is worse than we've seen in previous years. But at the same time, I think most people understand that the team is still making strides, right? Like the results weren't there in terms of points, but if you look at the growth of players like Jesper Bratt in particular or Jack Hughes,
Yeah.
um, you put a competent goalie in front of those folks, I think the year looks quite a bit different. So, despite the failure in terms of actual points, the expectations are going to continue to grow for next year. Just because one, they are improving as a team in some ways, but also like the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
Like patience is wearing thin. Not that there was necessarily all that much patience to begin with. It's been a rough decade.
And in the spirit of uh, eternal optimism, it almost feels like the pick. It's like wherever it ends up could be what the Devils are sitting at fifth right now. Statistically, they're most likely to drop one spot to six, but that's not speaking in the spirit of eternal optimism now.
That's right. We
But
expect first overall or bust, basically.
that's right. That's right. Um, we didn't lose 6 games in a row to end the season for nothing.
I'm just waiting for all of those tweets to come out after the results of the lottery are known, where folks point out a particular game where like a particular missed shot gave us just the right result to get it. I remember quite a few of those with Nico and Jack, but I'm trying to think what's our
The
record on.
Detroit game, I think.
That's
Oh,
right,
sorry.
yeah. What's our record on these draft lottery shows? I feel like we have a pretty good batting average for getting first overall. Didn't we do this? We did this for Jack Hughes for
We did
sure.
this for Jack.
I feel like we're batting at least 50%. I don't know if we did one for Nico.
I don't think we did for Nico.
I distinctly remember being on stream when the Rangers won the Phase 2 draft lottery, which was
Yeah.
a particular low light, I think, for the show in this channel. Um, but I still go back and watch the Jack one every once in a while just because I feel like your jokes were particularly on point. I remember you making fun of the Rangers GM looking like the kind of guy that would steal your lunch money. That one sticks out to me even years later.
I am flattered and still have my lunch money. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
So we're still
Um,
good on that front.
but in the spirit of eternal optimism, it almost feels like it's like a free top five or top six pick,
Yeah.
compared to, like you just mentioned, the skill on the team is there. The individual growth that we've seen was prominent,
Oh
and
yeah.
yet still picking in a good position for a good player, no matter how tonight ends.
In that spirit of optimism, this is going to be the year that sits in legends after a back to back cups in the 2025s, because this was we have the core of that championship team. We happen to have the worst goaltending on the planet, second worst, I guess. and ended up getting our version of Kale McCarr or whatever it is to add to our Nathan McKinnon, et cetera, that launches us into like that upper echelon.
That's right.
That's what I tell myself at night when I can't sleep. Probably not actually the case, but you know, it's nice to think that every once in a while.
Yeah.
You talked about odds. We can just go over those really quickly.
Okay.
So the most probable outcome, 44.2%, is that the Devils slide from 5th to 6th in the lottery. So like, whatever kind of emotional work you need to do to get ahead of that, I highly suggest it. That's the thing that's probably going to happen, almost 50%. Next most likely is staying put at 5th overall. That's 24.5%. And then the third most likely thing is still sliding back, except to 7th at 13.9%. So I think there's like 20-ish% left over that's split up between 1st and 2nd overall. So most likely you're moving back one. And then the next two likely outcomes are staying put or moving back two. So we can get the bummer stuff out of the way first.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
It
get
feels like
the technical possibilities out of the way.
Yeah. The things that are technically possible, but we know absolutely will not happen.
Yeah.
Moving back. It's weird though. Like you and I were talking offline before this started about, I don't know, just some of the complications around this. Like, yes, it doesn't feel like a year where we actually deserve a top 5 pick because of the personal growth of some of the stars, goaltending aside. But also, like, if you are the kind of person that is in favor of trading the pick away because we need some actual help now to take the next step and actually grow as a team results-wise, not just potential-wise, having a top 5 pick is great, except it's almost too valuable to trade. They just aren't traded that often. And I remember looking this up a couple months ago at this point and seeing that like within the last 10 years, I think the only 2 times a top 5 pick has been traded, it was traded over a year in advance and not intentionally. You're talking like the Erik Karlsson trade, where they obviously thought they'd be in a different place organizationally than they were. Things like that. And so for the Devils to have a top 5 pick, if that's how things shake out tonight, it's going to be really interesting because there isn't a ton of precedent in like the modern day NHL to actually trade that, let alone if they win 1st or 2nd overall. Like I can't imagine with the way the cap is, like staying flat for so many years, the value of a Shane Wright or Slafkovsky or whoever, like pick your poison, having one of those guys on their entry-level contract, like the price you could get for that would be insane, to the point where no one would pay it, almost. You know, it's just a weird spot to be in, where if you're in favor of trading the pick for immediate help, you might honestly want to root for staying put or even sliding back. It feels weird to say that.
When was the last time that, like, let's just say like a top 10 pick was traded for a player, like an NHL roster player? Because I'm thinking of the 9th overall pick for Corey Schneider back in 2013.
Yeah.
The Rangers traded Derek Stepan.
Is that the Elias Anderson?
And
pick?
Yeah, and Antti Ranta. And
yeah, that was 2017.
Got the 7th overall pick, took Elias Anderson. And I think Tony DeAngelo was also in that trade. I think he was going back from Arizona.
There's also Arizona last year. They traded, Vancouver traded 9th overall to them for Connor Garland's and that
monstrosity of a trade. Yeah.
So that it's pretty, still pretty rare, you know, like, it's. I'll read you something I wrote a couple weeks ago. Other than like the Erik Karlsson trade to San Jose, and then the Matt Duchene trade was another example of a top 5 pick ultimately being traded, not intentionally. You have to go all the way back to the Phil Kessel trade in Toronto with Boston.
Wow.
And the pick that was used to trade Tyler Seguin. That was at the 2010 draft. Um, so, like, even then, that pick was traded. So the pick that was traded, that was used to pick Tyler Seguin at the 2010 draft, was traded in September of 2009. So even still, that was like over a year, or not quite a year, but a season in advance, essentially. So it just isn't really done all that often. So it's going to be really weird to see what the Devils do, because there's so much noise around them trading the pick. Fitzgerald mentioned it in his end of season presser, but you just don't see it done that often. And yeah, if they get top two, it's hard to believe that there's anyone that would reasonably be traded out there. Like, everyone's in love with Fiala right now from the Minnesota Wild. It's like, is he worth a top 2 pick? I don't know. He's really good, but top 2 is like, that's the sort of trade you're going to hear about for the next 20 years, depending on the career of the person that's drafted with it. So yeah, it's going to be wild to think about that. No pun intended.
The Blue Jackets have a pick, right, in the top 6 right now, from that Seth Jones trade. Is that right?
Yeah. So that pick is only top 2 protected.
Okay.
So there's a really weird scenario, because they changed all the rules, right? So only the top 2 picks are selected in the lottery. You can only move up 10 spots, and starting now, you can only pick in the top 2 or win the lottery twice in a 5-year span. If someone lower down, what's the scenario? There's a possibility that the Chicago pick that was traded to Columbus is ultimately jumps up to top 3, despite the fact that only the top 2 picks are lottery, like in the lottery. Because if a team jumps up 10 spots, but can only make it to second overall, so whatever team that would be, I guess San Jose or Columbus. If Columbus wins and jumps up to second overall, Montreal is guaranteed the first overall pick, which means the next lottery draw is actually for third overall. And so if the Chicago pick wins that the Columbus will get both the first and the third overall, and Chicago's trade protection doesn't kick in because they only protected it against the top 2. And it would technically be the third overall, which is just way too complicated and the most NHL thing possible to set up the system like that. Like, it almost makes me wonder if the Chicago GM actually understood that when they made the trade protection. Because if you think, oh, it's just the first 2 overall picks that are in the lottery, so I only need to protect it for top 2, and all of a sudden there's a way for it to technically end up being third overall. Just nuts. It's so dumb, but that's the NHL for you. Very complicated. You can tell the league is run by lawyers. No offense to any lawyers present, but
nobody likes lawyers,
including lawyers. Oh man, I've got the lottery feed up now. We won't be able to pull in audio from the lottery feed, but we'll have it up on screen. Feel free to hang out. We'd love to, just to experience the lottery together. Really cool to see PK Subban on the ESPN panel. I like that. I'm going to miss having him on the team.
Yeah, I am too. I think he ends up back in some role eventually with Montreal.
Yeah.
I know it wasn't a very amicable separation, but I think that management team is largely gone for the most part.
Yeah, Bergevin's gone for sure. It's got to be weird though, because I'm sure the owner had to okay that trade, like the Molsons. So there must be some sort of weird kind of stuff there. But I feel like for sure with Bergevin gone, that door would be more open than not. I could see that. Like, he has his foundation set up there, right? Like he does so much work with the Children's Hospital.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for him to go back there. Montreal just seems like a PK Subban sort of city. It's got that vibe. Like he seems like someone that would thrive in a place that has a lot of nightlife, a lot of personality. Um, it's really perfectly suited for him.
I can certainly see it happening.
Yeah. Although he would crush it in like New York or LA doing media stuff for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think there's quite a bit of Canadian media that runs out of Montreal and Toronto. Like if he worked for Sportsnet or something, he could probably live there anyways.
So before the ping pong balls, so we want to just do a very brief, quick overview of roughly. I mean, we're gonna have folks have different top 5, but like generally speaking, the type of players that we're seeing or going to see.
Yeah, so I guess I'll take the easy answer first, which would be Shane Wright at first overall. He seems to be basically the consensus from what we've heard from people like Bob McKenzie and so forth. It sounds like maybe Slafkovsky, the winger, could kind of edge into that conversation depending on the team, but Shane Wright is kind of the prototypical, very responsible, professional, I'd say two-way center. Center being the key word there for sure. He's no Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews, but he's someone that could absolutely play in the NHL in October. Just the way he plays, you could throw him on a third line, power play time, and he'd do pretty well next year. He's not going to end up being like a scoring superstar by any stretch of the imagination, but he's someone that could absolutely be a first-line center for basically any team, which is why people covet him. You know, like there might not be any one particular standout skill, but he's someone that absolutely makes your team better for the next 10 to 15 years, and is already an absolute pro. So, yeah, he's probably the easy answer. Who else would he have, Ian?
Well, I would throw on there. You mentioned Slafkovsky. I'll get to him in just a minute. I think. Well, no, he's already the TSN rankings just came out today, I think, and they've got Logan Cooley, I think at 3, 2 or 3. But Logan Cooley is a center with the National Development Program. I think he's committed to Minnesota. University of Minnesota next year. Incredible skater. Probably very close to being the best skater in the draft. Maybe Brad Lambert. But anyway, Cooley has that really good combination of speed, playmaking, and vision. So I think he should be considered for a top 5 pick.
For sure, yeah, he's excellent. And we know Tom Fitzgerald loves his American boys, especially program. So you guarantee the Devils have a pretty big book on Cooley, just given their bias towards the program. Yeah, Slafkovsky obviously had a huge Olympic game. I think he scored 7 goals in 7 games, won MVP of the tournament, which is just a ridiculous resume to have as a draft eligible, not only to make the Olympic roster, albeit without NHL players present, but also to score a goal per game and win most valuable player of the entire tournament. He's 6'4", he's over 200 pounds. He's like just a really interesting, not quite the typical power forward, but someone that could play that style of game. He doesn't throw his body around as much as you might expect, just given his stature, but a very smart player that I think could also probably play in the NHL next year. He might be one of the only, there might only be 2 or 3 players. He could probably benefit from more time, either playing pro overseas or in the AHL, but he's someone that on the right team I think could be sheltered enough to make it. He's definitely going to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, and this is definitely going to sound creepy.
Okay.
But I remember when he first started making it onto the international stage, he was like 13 or 15 years old. And it's crazy how, I've been hearing that name for a couple of years, and it's now finally his draft year.
Yeah,
But
it's that old man feeling of like, oh, I've been hearing about this dude for ages, and he's finally here.
yeah,
Like the first time someone gets drafted, that's, um, you know, was born in the year you graduated middle school or high school or like whatever the case is. It's one of those milestones for sure. Um, yeah, definitely someone that's been a top prospect for some time. There are two very interesting defensemen that have the potential to go in the top five, I'd say.
hmm
And you can see them on the board here on ESPN, but Simon Nemec and Jiricek, both European players, both right-handed D. Nemec being the more kind of smooth skating, offensively minded. I'm not sure I'd call him a full-on offensive defenseman. He does have a two-way element to his game. Jiricek being the more kind of physical, aggressive player, who sadly missed most of the season with a knee injury, but came back at the end and has looked really strong, both offensively and kind of physically. So it'll be really interesting to see which teams covet which, because both of those players, I think, depending on who you ask, hold similar stature on the draft rankings. So it might just be a matter of preference. I would suspect, just based on Tom Fitzgerald's biases through a couple drafts, that they'd probably be a Jiricek team, just kind of coveting that physical play while still having really great skating. But both players are going to be really interesting, top four potential defensemen.
yeah. And to me, Nemec strikes me more as a transition defense or defenseman, like moves the puck well in transition, whereas Jiricek, he's got an absolute cannon of a shot.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, he what was the tournament? I think it was a tournament, right, that he injured his knee in.
Yeah, I think it was the World Juniors before they got canceled because of COVID.
I think yes.
Amazing to get injured in like one of 3 games that was played in the tournament.
Yeah. It was like the first. Yeah, it was like the first game too, I think.
Yeah, and a knee injury too, which
Right.
is really tough in your draft year.
Yeah.
That's what kept Morgan Riley down in his draft year, for example.
Yeah.
I don't. From what I can tell, it hasn't really impacted his draft stock, unless you think he would have risen to, definitely top 2 or 3. He's definitely in the top 5 conversation. Like I said, it's probably just a matter of preference. And we can see the cards being moved into the studio.
Oh boy.
I was just thinking, and I wouldn't wish harm on anyone. It would be really funny to see someone trip making
Yes.
that trip, and just to scatter the cards face up. That's a part of me I probably shouldn't encourage too much, but
No, but in the spirit of chaos.
Team Chaos. I haven't
Team
heard
Chaos.
anything about a leak, by the way, either. I remember
Oh.
the Jack Hughes lottery leaked, but I don't know if we knew that on stream. So it was probably the case where half the people
Oh, that's
watching
right. Yeah.
knew
before.
before we did.
It's, I believe in filmmaking that's called dramatic irony.
Yeah.
Technically speaking, I guess the Lafreniere draft lottery, right, leaked.
Oh yeah, that's true too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not really, but there was one other name on there that I think we should briefly mention. Matthew Savoy.
Mm.
I think he's committed to University of Denver, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not.
Basically,
Yeah, go
there was
ahead.
a weird. Oh, actually, you know what? He was, but he wasn't at the same time. There was this weird thing. The WHL has never had an exceptional player, ever. No, and by that, a player getting exceptional status.
Yeah.
And what that means is, was it 15-year-old, right?
Yeah, you get
That's
to go
for
1
15.
year early.
Yeah. So notable players have had it in the OHL. McDavid, I think Tavares.
Yep, Tavares.
Aaron Ekblad.
Shane Wright for this year as
Shane.
well.
Oh yes, Shane Wright, and shoot, there was a defenseman that the Tampa Bay had.
Sean Day.
Sean Day. That's right. The QMJHL was Joe Veleno. I think that was their only one, and Matthew Savoy was the first one for the WHL. So he was committed at some point to University of Duluth. No, excuse me. Oh my goodness. University of Denver. But now he's playing with Winnipeg, so he's not NCAA
Yeah,
eligible.
he's committed
But
at this point. Yeah.
but Savoy is a very high-end offensive generator. He doesn't exactly have a high-end speed, but he's very, very talented. Um, the one thing that I will say that is a little bit concerning, just for my own thing, and I'll stop talking because he's got the cards ready, is that he's had some very high-profile major concussions over the past like 2 years or so, like two big concussions, which sucks, you know.
He's also
for many reasons.
on the smaller side too. So definitely one of the better puck handlers and creative passers in this draft. He also happens to be like 5'9.5". So definitely like maybe a Marco Rossi situation. Although Rossi definitely had a better two-way game, where you're betting on skill versus physicality. But Savoy doesn't shy away from anything. But it has cost him in the past, like you said, with concussions.
But he's, like I said, very high-end skill who could drop because of that size, lack of high-end skating speed.
Mm-hmm. You just know he's going to drop to what should have been a playoff team this year. They're going to pick him up, and it's going to be dynasty time, basically, in 2 years. Yeah. He's definitely going to take some time to get pro ready, but when he's there, just the skill alone is going to be really interesting. If you can plug him into a system that's already thriving, he's looking pretty good. Well,
it's also promising that the Devils organization draft prospects, the biggest needs are right shot defenseman and left wing.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be in good position to take one.
See, Vegas just got their card pulled, so that pick has not moved. So 16th overall goes to Buffalo. Everyone looking as excited as always on camera.
Yeah. So they're pulling the original cards?
It looks like it, yeah.
Okay.
So we should expect Vancouver next. Vancouver. Yep. I love the shots of executives who have no desire to be there on camera. And also, I don't know if they still send people to the room where the balls are pulled, but getting trapped there for 3 hours, I think, is also hilarious.
I think
Winnipeg. So that's what we'd expect too. We're looking for the Islanders next. There's Chevy, pointing his camera up his nose. Classic. They're going fast. Yeah, there's the Islanders. Man, Lou's been in the news for all sorts of reasons this week, eh?
Yeah. My stream's a little behind. Okay, there we go.
Oh, man. Here's Columbus. If they get pulled. Columbus. Oh, man. I love the idea of Lou Lamoriello saying that he needed to fire the coach because the players needed a new voice, but then saying that he didn't talk to any players about it. That's a particular favorite of mine this week. Wow, so far no moves, which I guess is the stats-wise for each of them makes sense. They have such a small percentage chance of moving up. I wonder if the Devils just are going to sit, It's going to be really weird if it just kind of stays put.
Who's going it for you right now?
Buffalo just got pulled.
Okay.
So yeah, everything is like as is. Detroit is up next. They typically have terrible lottery luck. Yeah. Detroit stays put at number 8. I see a lot of Go Habs Go in the chat. Very interesting. Number 7, we should expect to see Ottawa. This might end up being the most boring draft lottery of all time, Ian, at this point.
I'll take it.
So we want to see Chicago next, because it's either Chicago or us, or whoever. It could get complicated, but Chicago Blackhawks. There you go. Which means that Columbus gets that pick. So that goes. So they get. They're gonna have a really nice draft.
So we're hoping for Philly here.
We're hoping for Philly. Yeah. I'm gonna laugh so hard.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Oh. Twitter is not going to be kind to Devils fans for the next couple of weeks.
Oh, shit.
I love how even Tom Fitzgerald does not look super impressed, despite... Oh, man. This is classic Devils.
Yeah, this is... Yeah.
Seattle? Yeah. So funny.
Oh, this is you know... you know what?
Just grab the popcorn.
Yeah, grab the popcorn.
So good.
Oh, man.
I wonder who else won. Arizona fans are going to be so pissed.
Oh my gosh, this is...
Ian, we can't keep doing this.
By the way, for anybody wondering, I do have Assassin's Creed playing in the background.
Yeah, all the classic superstitions. Man. The Devils, such a classic Devils thing to happen these days. I feel like we had shit luck for like 8 years, and then as soon as Nico hit, it's been amazing draft lottery luck and terrible goalie luck, and I would gladly switch the two today if someone asked me. Someone asked in the chat, I'm curious what you think, Ian. Do you think Barry Trotz would be a good fit with the Devils? Speaking of Lou Lamoriello and doing Lou Lamoriello things.
I pause because while this is no slight against Trotz as a coach. We know what he can do.
Yeah.
You know, I just wonder, there seemed to be some kind of rift between like Barzell and Trotz. Maybe something about like the system of play. I'm not too sure about that. But what I would say is that kind of structure on the team would be fantastic. I do see a good fit there, but my only concern would be how the more offensively minded guys take to that.
Yeah, like I know Barzell did have good years under Trotz. This year obviously was really tough, but I also think about the fact, didn't they start on like a 13-game road trip and half the team got COVID? Like it felt like a very Devils kind of season for them, where things just kept piling up. I think what we've heard is that Barry Trotz and coaches like him tend to have a shelf life, maybe. So I wonder if he just hit his.
Yeah,
he wasn't there that long though.
No, especially with the cap structure as it is.
Yeah,
that's
fair. Yeah, because you're stuck. Yeah, like you have to cycle players through just to keep it fresh, but you're so stuck in terms of the contracts that you have. And I love Lou, but especially when your GM is Lou Lamoriello, and those kind of depth players get rewarded, you would be kind of hamstrung a little bit, for sure.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe they won again.
I love how Fitz has the jersey and the hat.
I have to say, I know we talked about this kind of at length before. I've really come around on the jersey.
Yes, I have too.
It looks nice on the ice. All right, number 3. Let's see who's going to be mad.
It's not going to be the Devils.
No, it's either Arizona or Montreal. Arizona. So we like the Devils have either first or second overall. The most likely, in terms of like the math, is that the Devils have second overall.
Yeah.
So just setting expectations there. And like we said at the top, Ian, that might actually be the preferable position to be in if you're stuck thinking about positionality and trading the pick and so forth. Here we go. Wow. Devils pick second overall.
Playing with house money.
Yeah, seriously. If he felt like this was an embarrassment of riches before, having second overall is really interesting. I know quite a few people either chatting on Twitter or like on the Devils Discord, for example, that would have preferred this outcome to first, just because first you might be kind of stuck and feels so dumb to say picking Shane Wright, like a very, very impactful potential first line center, which ironically is exactly what Montreal needs. And Montreal is hosting the draft this year, so I feel
that's cool.
Really happy for them and their fans, because obviously it was talk about disappointing seasons after going to the Cup Finals, picking first, but yeah.
What a wild swing.
Right?
Holy heck.
To go from the Cup Finals to picking first overall and earning it. Like, they earned first overall for sure. Man. Oof. This is so funny. Of course it's the Devils.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for Arizona, just because.
Yes.
I mean, they have half the second round already in terms of picks. Like, they've been burning off assets like crazy just to kind of bottom out. I mean, third overall in this draft, you could get as good, if not a better player at third as you would at second. It's just so close after Shane Wright. But it puts them in a good position to bottom out again next year for the real treat, which would be, Connor Bedard or Matvei Michkov or Adam Fantilli, like that kind of three-headed monster. But obviously you want to get, especially for a team like Arizona, the most draft capital as you can.
This is beside the point. It would be interesting to see, like, a player like Bedard get drafted by Arizona. In terms of, like, you want to saving the franchise, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And it paves the pathway for Austin Matthews to join him in free agency, as every Toronto media person likes to hint at.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, Bedard would do amazing things for Arizona.
But Arizona has 3 picks in the first round. They've got the 3rd pick, the 30th, and the 31st. And they've got 1, 2, 3... 3 picks, I think, as well in the second. But yeah, all right. So now the fun part.
Now all the baseless speculation begins.
Yeah.
So first off, the Devils will only be able to win one more draft lottery in the next 5-year period. So the clock's ticking.
We'll only need just one more.
Just one more.
Just one more. It was Buffalo's mantra. Now it's.
We've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
Yeah.
We need our shiny things.
We like the shiny things. Yeah. Yes.
So I would assume, especially just given the fact that it's Montreal, they're hosting the draft. Their biggest need is center. Like, obviously Suzuki is nice, but if you could pair Suzuki with Shane Wright for the next 10 years, Cole Caulfield's in the mix, and they have a really nice set of prospects to begin with anyways. That seems like a foregone conclusion, right? Is that too bold?
Perhaps picking Shane Wright? No. Yeah, I think that's a fair assumption.
So that leaves literally everybody else to the Devils.
Yeah.
Man, it's tough. Trading a second overall pick is going to be really hard. I mean, practically, one, because anyone who could reasonably be equivalent to that in terms of worth, nobody's trading those players, right? Because they're that valuable to the team that they're currently on. But also just perception-wise, Like, let's say, I would say right now, top two pick, you're probably looking at someone like Slavkovsky, like a huge power winger, got a good goal scoring touch. He could potentially be on the team next year. Um, that's definitely not a sure thing by any stretch, but like we said, he's probably one of 2, 3 players, probably just 2, um, who could do that next season, or one of the defensemen, I would say. Um, Although, like you said, with Cooley, he deserves to be in that conversation too.
I think so. I ultimately, honestly, I as much as the Devils need right defensemen, I can't see them. Well, put it this way, I think Slavkovsky checks all the boxes for what they're looking for.
I completely agreed. Like at this point, I would put money on them on if they're using the pick and not trading down, which would also be a possibility. Um, it would be someone like Slavkovsky, for sure.
Yeah, because I don't want to discount Jiricek or Cooley. I think it'll come down. I think it'll be a tough decision, so to speak, but I think they'll ultimately go with Slavkovsky.
Yeah, we have a question in the chat. Hey Ian, hey Duncan, is there anybody impactful enough at number 2 to be picked who's a defenseman? I don't see how we can draft another forward. To me, seems like you gotta pick a D-man or trade the pick. I think that's a very fair kind of framework to be working with, right? That with this team needs to continue to produce high-end, cost-controlled D-men, especially on the right side. And the 2 names that we throw around in answer to this question are Simon Nemec and Jiricek, both of which are right-handed. Both fit very different kind of profiles, but I mean, I think that fits the bill. I think you could pick either one of them at number 2, realistically.
Yeah. I think I would be a little bit, if we were to pick a defenseman there, I think I'd be more comfortable with the Jiricek than Nemec.
Is that because of the physical play or something else?
I think, honestly, and I'm going to be really vague here, but I just see him as having a higher ceiling in terms of the raw offensive talent and tools that he has, just that explosiveness.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I've seen a lot of that going around on kind of the public scouting Twitter sphere, that Jiricek, like that conversation is starting to happen. The one thing I'll say is, if you're a fan of like Byron Bader, someone that tracks kind of analytics for prospects and does NHLE like equivalencies to project players, what Simon Nemec is doing is like historic. What he's done in kind of the pro leagues overseas, especially in the playoffs. I think he had 15 points in 17 playoff games.
Oh yeah, he had a ridiculous run.
So you also have to kind of hold that in context too. Like, it's so hard because I agree, like Jiricek's toolbox I think is more pro ready and maybe would give him a better chance of hitting his peak. But at the same time, what Nemec is doing speaks to like a higher level, I think, offensive potential. And then you're stuck being like, I don't know how to compare those two things because they're apples and oranges. But then also, like, where does team need fit in? Because I would say the team would probably, if you're thinking of like the team composition and complementing pieces that we know or can reasonably expect to be there in 5 years, I'd say Jiricek probably fits better alongside a guy like Luke Hughes and Dougie Hamilton and so forth. But I don't know. It's so complicated. That's why people spend so many hours agonizing over this stuff, scouting either for teams or publicly or whatever the case is. It's so hard. Man. But yeah, both those names are ones to look out for, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately, that's going to be the question, isn't it? Because both positions are positions of need between a left winger and a particularly right shot defenseman.
Yeah.
And also, it would be unfair of me to not mention, it would be unfair of me to bring up my concerns with someone like Savoy with his injuries, and not again mention that Jiricek had a pretty bad knee injury.
Yeah, and sometimes that really does have an impact, and then sometimes you're Morgan Riley and you drop to a team that you shouldn't drop to, and you turn out to be a top pairing defenseman. So yeah, it's tough. Who of the two do you think could make an impact quicker between the two D-men we've mentioned? That's interesting. I'm going to have to think about that. I'd almost be tempted to say, in a weird way, Nemec, despite the fact that Jiricek's profile seems more kind of pro-ready. That's because I feel like a coach could kind of shelter a player like Simon Nemec, give them like the power play time, keep them on the third pair, really kind of isolate their ice time, and let him do his thing, and he'll produce points easier than Jiricek, who I think is more like a little more in the mold of like Moritz Seider, where the physical aspect of his play is so important to his value, and that's just harder to get right quicker.
Yeah, especially at a young age.
Yeah. So even though I think overall impact, Jiricek will hit earlier in terms of like immediate impact scoring wise, Nemec, I could definitely see a path forward for that. Because if you shelter Jiricek, I'm not sure you're getting as much overall value early on. It's tough. You just don't know how players are going to pan out, right? When they hit the ice, and you don't know who they're going to be paired with, and even who the coach is. Like, all those things are question marks if you're a Devils fan particularly.
Yeah. I would have to say, though, that I agree. Jiricek could step in as soon as next year. But his type of skill set and his potential, I would want to see. I would be more comfortable if I was looking for someone to step in right away. I would be more comfortable with Nemec, but that doesn't. Yeah, I just think Jiricek needs like 1 year, maybe 1 year more to get just a little stronger.
I've had to put a very obnoxious Montreal Canadiens fan in timeout on YouTube. I didn't know you could do that. Very satisfying to hit the words timeout on YouTube. But we welcome everyone here, but maybe just don't spam the chat. Man, I'm excited. This makes things complicated in a really interesting way. Because I feel like, and I have zero insider information on this, but you've definitely heard about it from like Friedman and even Fitzgerald himself. I feel like before today, they were hoping to trade the pick. To make a big swing. You know, you get a guy like Fiala, or in my dreams only, Matthew Tkachuk. You sign a free agent goalie like Ville Husso, and you're looking pretty good for next year. It's so hard to trade the second overall pick. But interesting that you could get a guy that could help you next year with it, in Slafkovsky in particular. So hard.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I wasn't too sure how long or how much of that should have been taken seriously rather than like just standard conventional like puffing. You know, puffing up, you know, like, oh, I might trade the pick, you know.
Yeah, just to drum up chat, for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like the GM life is like high school, where like people are floating rumors, they're paying attention to who's talking to who at the lunch table, you know. It's like, it's real high school stuff. And for sure, Fitzgerald would have seen that from Shiro, like learning from him. And he's said that for years. And I don't know if, like, think about, you know, the draft where we picked up Mercer and Mukmadulin in particular, where you heard so much about the fact that the Devils are willing to trade their second and third first rounders. And you heard that even day of, and you heard it after it didn't happen, that they tried and it just couldn't work. It's entirely possible that that's true, and I probably believe that that's true. But there's a difference between being willing to do it or wanting to do it and finding a dance partner, you know? Like, it's hard because your definition of value is going to be different than someone else's, and you're accountable to the fans and your bosses. to make a good pick. And hilarious that I say that, and then they picked Shakir Mukhamadullin. So like, the world's a strange place. you know.
Speaking of which, though, the Utica Comets game is starting very soon. The first playoff game.
That's right.
Of the AHL.
Yeah, they get a bye, right, through the first
Yeah, they got a bye for the first round.
I saw a sick video of Alexander Holtz and Fabian Zetterlund showing up in pure white suits with those like crazy reflective sunglasses. It looked like they were going to like a club in Miami or something. They're very ready, and also very pale. Fabian Zetterlund in particular, you always see it right after a shift. He's the reddest faced person I've ever seen in my life because he's so pale and he works so hard. Yeah, very excited to see how that goes just because that team is stacked now with everyone back.
Yeah, and now Chase Stillman is there.
That's right. And
Shakir. And Shakir Mukhamadullin.
Although
has he arrived yet?
He's there apparently, but it's going to take him a while to kind of adjust. They phrased it as he's there. He has his visa. He's going to watch for a while, and they'll hope to get him into a couple of games. This round of the playoffs is only best of 5 though, so it's a little shorter. So I would expect to see him in the next round should they advance, and they should. But you probably won't see him for this round of the playoffs in particular.
It's actually really interesting how many there's quite a few. There's quite a few players from Czech Republic and Slovakia and projected like in the top 32 or so.
Yeah, really interesting to see, and it's nice to see that because I feel like those programs, especially in the last 2 years, you heard so much about like Swiss hockey, the German team that had a couple of first rounders a few years ago, really started to kind of Peterka and
Stutzla.
Stutzla. Who's the
Sider?
other guy?
Was he on there?
Yeah.
Oh,
there's another forward I'm thinking of that I just can't. Reichel.
The Chicago pick.
Like at a certain point, especially the Slovakian program, it looked like that was really kind of losing their status and being replaced by the Germans. And then this year, there is a German player who's expected to go in the first round, but with 2 Slovakians supposed to go top 10. Obviously, it's a really great year for them. Man, what a night! If we end up in this position again next year, obviously the stakes will be a bit higher just because the prize of Connor Bedard or Michkov, both kind of generational players, is obviously higher than Shane Wright. I love Shane Wright. I've seen him live, 10 or 15 times. Amazing player. But Connor Bedard is like, the next one. It'll be really interesting to see. I think there would be quite a few less Devils fans if we're in that position again next season, like bottom 5. But yeah, really interesting position for them to be in this year, just because of the circumstances. It's going to be a spicy offseason.
It will. It really will. There's one other player that I want to just mention. Shout out. I'm not sure. But coming into the draft, I'm going to butcher the name because that's a tradition. Ivan Miroshnichenko. Russian-born forward, left winger, incredibly high skilled. One of probably projected top 10 pick before the season, and unfortunately I think he's Hodgkin's disease.
Yeah, Hodgkin's lymphoma.
So he's recovering from that, and obviously you hope that he is able to make a recovery. But I only bring him up just because that is a potential diamond in the rough pick, if he falls because of those concerns.
Yeah, I think Corey Prodman put out his kind of ranking, his pre-lottery draft ranking, and still had him in the top round, and made note that like he's obviously been diagnosed with cancer. He's undergoing treatment. I think he's in Germany, and he's been there for a couple months at this point, and has lost a ton of weight as he would going through chemo. But apparently quite a few NHL teams have actually flown out to Germany to talk to him. and it sounds like there's quite a bit of interest. It's just sad that obviously he's going through this physically, but that his draft stock will ultimately drop because of it. Like you said, he was projected top 10 pick before the season.
Yeah.
He'll probably be a second rounder this year. I could see like a playoff team using a second rounder to take a flyer on him and just hope that his recovery continues to go well, but then he builds up his strength back and can make up the development time. But yeah, definitely thinking of him. That's really tough. It's like Rodion Amirov, right, with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Also losing a year to cancer. Yeah, really tough.
But not to end on a somber note. My guess for the top picks at this point would be Montreal taking Wright first. Devils, I think they're going to take Slavkovsky.
Agreed.
I think Arizona is then going to take Cooley.
Yeah, get their center for sure.
Yeah. And then I don't know what Seattle does.
Seattle needs everything.
They need everything.
I could see them going defenseman just because I feel like that top three in terms of forwards is pretty straightforward. Other than that, you're looking at like a Matthew Savoy or Joaquin Kamel or Yurov, the Russian winger. But
yeah, he's good. Yeah.
I think those defensemen are probably the most. Like if you're Seattle, you're making long-term picks just because you have literally nothing in the cupboard. I think it makes a lot of sense to select a defenseman just because they'll take a bit longer to get there.
And same with the Flyers, actually, because they kind of need a whole lot of everything. Their blue line is kind of a mess.
There's a few things I've really enjoyed this year, and I feel really bad saying it, but the demise of the Flyers is definitely one of them. Just with the moves they've made, it just hasn't worked. And I also have to say, seeing the Rangers potentially get not quite swept out of the first round, but being exposed for being a couple really exciting players and the best goalie on the planet right now, I will not shed too many tears after Game 5, I suspect. But it's an exciting time to be a Devils fan. I really appreciate everyone hanging out with us tonight. Obviously, it worked out great in a very confusing and interesting way. Yeah, really excited for Montreal and their fans, but I think Devils fans will have a lot to talk about for the next, month and a half? 2 months?
I think it's July 7th.
Oof, that's a long time. Yeah. So, yeah, lots to talk about. Twitter, the Discord's going to be very busy. Yeah, can't wait to chat with everyone. But what a wild ride. We can't be here next year, Ian.
No.
We can't do this again. We'll be talking playoffs next year.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Someone please tell me that.
Oh my gosh. But like hey, another year, another win. You're talking about the batting average.
Yeah. We'll see you in 12 months.
Yeah. Yep.
Thanks so much, everyone. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for joining, everybody.
Bye, guys.